Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by CrowCast. Massive couple of days in the world of the Adelaide Football Club, and here to talk all about it are the usual suspects. We have Donkey Magoo. How you going, Donk?
Good to be with you, Fan. Good to be with you, boys, and good to be with you, listeners.
Wow.
That's
very
fantastic.
statesmanlike, Donkey. Very statesmanlike.
Thanks, Mr. Laws. We have Macca. How you going, Mac?
I can't, Matt said. I'm okay.
Yeah. And Peter J. How you going, Peter?
I'm good, mate. Donkey, you auditioning for to be next Prime Minister in a couple of weeks' time.
Well, why not? Everyone else is.
Everyone else does, I guess.
I'll get a joke. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Peter.
Go on.
Peter who?
Scott Morrison.
What?
Get it?
What?
Knock, knock. Who's there? Peter. Peter who? Scott Morrison. Like as in... I don't know if you paid attention last week, but Peter Dutton was going to take over as the Prime Minister, and he was like the knock, knock. I'll get out the crayons and send you guys some pictures.
That's very average. It's very average. If that's going to be an indication of the quality of your competition segment later on, we might just have to can it, I think.
Mate, the people want my competition segment, and it's going to be expanded tonight to cover all the ins and outs and all the big plays that happen throughout the year. People are going to really look forward to what's going on tonight.
Hey, look, go on, mate.
Sorry, I was just going to say, obviously, this is revenge because I told you they'd rather have a session on my letterbox.
Hey, look, there's tons to talk about tonight, so we shouldn't dilly-dally because obviously the competition segment is the one that everyone's waiting for, so we should cover all this other peripheral stuff first before we get to the good stuff. So let's move on to some news, shall we? Oh, except I haven't loaded the news thing, so just go on with it, Pete. Just go on with the news.
I'll pretend that I heard the music, mate, and I will just go on with it.
Just go on with it.
Yeah, look, as we all know, it's a pretty massive couple of days for news at the Adelaide Football Club, and I guess in chronological order was the press conference from Collective Minds, which was a little bit unusual, but it has certainly got the drums beating and got the media very, very excited. One Melbourne journalist in particular is really flogging that horse and
flogging.
So yeah, that's right. So that was that happened on Monday, and then of course the list management stuff started today, and we had the delistings of Harry Deer, of Jackson Edwards, and of course young Ben Jarman was the other one that went. And we had Josh Franco and say that he's been. I'm not sure if he came out and said he was leaving, but it was certainly reported that he's leaving. And then of course we've got the major news which broke tonight, which was Mitch McGovern. And of course, Fane, as you well know, we broke that quite a few number of months ago. That we had pretty reliable information that Mitch was going to be looking for a trade, and that there was a lot of fallout from the camp. And that there was potentially other players on the list as well that would be affected. And, of course, we saw the departure of Kirtley Hampton a few weeks ago. So, all in all, a fairly tumultuous time. And it's almost you're not an Adelaide supporter unless you're sort of used to the fact that it's a tumultuous time at this time of the year. We just seem to get it year in, year out.
So which one do we cover first? Let's start with the delisting, shall we?
Yep.
That's the easy one. So, my personal opinion, I reckon Harry Deer's a bit stiff to end up on the scrap heap. I thought he offered something, and I wouldn't mind betting that he gets picked up as a delisted free agent or whatever it is, re-rookied or whatever happens at Hawthorn or somewhere else, because I think he's got a few tools, and if his body gets right, then I reckon he's got something to offer someone. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, well, he was in the AFLX All-Australian squad, so you can't look past that.
No, look, I think that he had to be delisted because the biggest problem that Harry faces is he hasn't really set the world on fire, and where he basically plays, there's too much competition that has got ability and will be part of the future of the Adelaide Crows, which again makes it difficult for him, not just with the players that are already there, but with the ones that are coming up and then will probably be there sometime next year and definitely the year after. So there's really nowhere for Deer to go. So I think we're probably doing him a favour by delisting him.
Yeah, Ben Jarman was probably not as surprising. 2 years on the list, didn't really make any big progression, probably lacked a bit of pace to go along with his lack of height. So not too many surprises there, I wouldn't have thought.
No, I have a funny feeling whether they know something, whether there's something already in train in terms of being able to snaffle Lukosius in the draft, and that they're clearing some room for him in terms of key position players that could possibly be something that influenced it. But I think even without Lukosius, I think as we who says on the chat there, somebody mentioned Jason McKay. Good to have you along. Jason was saying that the big Elliot Himmelberg and the fog had probably gone past him anyway.
Oh, we'd already moved on from Deer onto Ben Jarman, Pete, but thanks for
I hadn't had a say on Big Harry. So
oh, sorry. What do you reckon about Ben?
Ben Jarman, not surprised at all. The one that I am a little bit surprised with is Jackson Edwards.
Yeah.
A couple of times I saw him, I thought he showed a bit. I thought that he used the ball very, very well, and pretty good vision, pretty good with ball in hand. I thought he was a little bit stiff, but probably of the three, I think probably Edwards was the only one a little bit stiff.
Would agree with you on that, Pete.
Yeah, only 1 year on the list for Jackson, so a little bit surprising. Obviously, we've got the younger Edwards in the wings coming through over the next year or two. So, and reportedly, without being too harsh, the better of the two, or shows more promise. The more promise of the both. But that makes five out so far with those three delistings, plus Gibson and Hampton. Obviously, in the club saying today that no further delistings will be made until after trade week.
That's pretty standard. That's what we normally do. The ones that are dead set going and of no value, trade value, they occasionally we delist them before the trade period. But in general, we hang on to most of them, and that includes people of the calibre. Perhaps CEY might be regarded in that, possibly a trade, maybe not a trade, and then you've got to work out what you're going to keep and see how you've gone in the trade. So I think it's just our standard way of doing things.
The one that probably surprised me that wasn't mentioned in dispatches is Patrick Wilson. Hasn't really been shown any particular favour from the club. He did get one game and probably struggled being played out of position, although he came good a little bit in the second half, but certainly hasn't been shown any real love by the club. So I was mildly surprised that they let go of Jackson ahead of Paddy Wilson.
Well, one thing in Wilson's favour, he has played one game, and Edwards is not there at the moment, and although I still think he should have got another year. Wilson did not set the world on fire, there's no doubt about that, but as you say, he was played slightly out of position, so I don't know. He could well be gone once they go through the list anyhow.
Possibly. And Matty Signorello is probably the other one, although he has shown better form as the years progress. There's not much about Signorello that really stands out to me.
You have to say to yourself, can you see an AFL player in him? I can't. I don't know whether others can, but I just can't see an AFL player in him.
I think a number of those players probably a little bit stiff just in terms of how the year panned out for them. I mean, we look at the AFL side and we bemoan the amount of injuries that we had, but that, of course, has a knock-on and impact. the SNFL team, who end up having to fight their way through a season with more top-up players, and you would probably think, and normally there would be, a few experienced players around them to try and help with their football. So I think a difficult year for them. They, were involved in quite a number of heavy losses, and very, very little in the way of experience around them to help develop their football. I wouldn't have thought this year.
Yeah, agree, Pete. It would have been tough going in the SANFL this year. The amount of top-ups we had running through there and so little experience wouldn't have been an easy gig, and certainly difficult to show your wares as a young up-and-coming player, I reckon. Donkey, you're quiet. What do you reckon?
I don't get to watch these blokes play SNFL, so it's really hard for me to comment on people I haven't seen, but I'll do it anyway. I think
very refreshing for someone in the media not to comment on things they don't know anything about.
No, it's just I think Jackson was probably a bit stiff, as you guys have said, only 1 year, so you're really going to have enough time to show what you got. I'm hoping we re-rookie him or do something like that, but thought that was a bit strange. I would have thought that Harry Deer would have had a little bit of trade currency, or at least we could agree some deals with it. So I'm just a bit surprised, but if we don't think we're going to get anything from him, then so be it.
And I guess then we need to move on to the situation that we first reported exclusively, didn't we, Pete? Exclusively on the 5th of June.
It wasn't exclusive.
5th of June, over
exclusive.
A week before Mr. McClure got his teeth into it. I'll let you take that one.
Well, of course, it certainly wasn't news to us when it came through today that Mitch McGovern's requested a trade, and we believe, certainly last I heard, Carlton were high on the list of suitors, probably in terms of having the cap space to make a fairly significant offer to get him across, and also the currency to trade him out of a contract. So, which I'm sure that he'll need a bit, but they're old sparring partners now, Adelaide and Carlton. They're almost aligned teams, aren't they? They just the amount of players that seem to go back and forth between the two sides is amazing. So that will set up a fairly interesting trade period for us. I suspect that we will be looking to trade up fairly high in the draft, and I think Mitch McGovern really does give us some impetus to push up into the pointy end. And I've got no doubt that they'll be looking for Lukosius, and depending on where everything else lands, they'll be trying to pick up one or two more as well of those much hyped South Australian kids.
Yeah, so I guess it begs the question, I mean, first of all, before we deal with the machinations of it, I guess we've got to deal with the issue of why Mitch has chosen to leave 1 year after signing an extension.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And look, when we dropped that little bomb back in June, it was made very clear to me that he was very unhappy with the camp. There was also some issues with his with some of his injury treatment, and they really were the two main issues that were pointed out to me. But certainly he was particularly upset about things that went on at the camp. Now I know subsequently McClure broke the story about the fact that it was to do with money. If I'm going to join the dots on that one, Fiend, I'm going to say that if you're a player manager and you've got your players pretty disgruntled and is talking about getting a trade at the end of the year, and if you start putting out feelers, it's probably not unusual that some numbers would start to be floated around, and that's probably the winds that blew McClure's way. Sometime afterwards. That's my guess. I don't know that for sure, but it was certainly made very clear to me that in the initial aspect of his dissatisfaction with the club wasn't to do with the money that he signed on for last year. It was primarily as a result of his concerns with the camp. and his concerns with some of his injury treatment.
And let's be clear about this, and this isn't a big noting session. This is just to add some context around what you're saying, Pete. And we said it at the time, and we can reiterate it here. The bloke that gave us the information about Mitch McGovern has been continually spot on with every piece of information that he's given us. He gave us McGovern's re-signing last year. He gave us Jared Lyons, a number of other things, and it's from that same person that we have the information around, the dissatisfaction with the camp and all the rest of it. So we're not speculating. That's basically what's been told to us, and I agree with you. I think the money talk, which has come up later in the season, is more of a negotiation tool, I would have thought. I don't think it's the primary reason. My understanding is from somewhere that I can't remember where, but my understanding was that Bryce is actually getting paid less than Mitch. So the issues around Mitch kicking up about Bryce getting signed on and, money and all the rest of it doesn't really ring true. And if I remember rightly, a couple of players at the club, including the captain, took a bit of a cut to keep Mitch on board and to bring Bryce across, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was true. It was stated that Tex took a salary cut.
Yeah, wasn't that the trigger of all the Sloan conversation? No, Tex took a pay cut and renegotiated for the rest of the extension of the contract, but Sloan didn't, and that's where we got to where we were with him.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. But, the bottom line is I'm with you, Pete. I don't think it's money. I think that's secondary, and obviously the talk's going to be about money now because they're talking about contracts. So, certainly the info that we got given in June was that it was camp-related.
And I can go back to when we got that information shortly before a little bit of time before he signed, where he was humming and hawing about whether he was going to re-sign. The word that we got there was that he was relatively happy in Adelaide and settled, and that wasn't the issue around his re-signing. There were some personal issues, which I certainly won't go into, back in Western Australia that were playing on his mind, and that was influencing him, but he got past those. Now, it then transpires that obviously in that camp that there was a part of the camp that had them exposing issues, and I think that as I understand it, some of those issues that were personal to him were touched upon, and certainly created some angst, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's as much as we've got, and it's there's certainly no surprise, and unfortunately, another high quality young player walks out on the club.
Yeah. Well, let's before we talk about possible ins and outs, let's segue from that conversation to the presser that occurred yesterday by our friends at Collective Minds, because that obviously, according to our information, was an instigator for the McGovern situation. This is my own personal opinion, based on the research that I did earlier in the season, and my own ability to read people. Have you ever seen a bigger load of bullshit than the bullshit that was trotted out on Monday afternoon?
It was a very piss poor effort by them, I thought. And the fact is, I thought very strange that these were supposed to be the big guns of Collective Minds. There's no collective sign up anywhere in the background. They could have been just two blokes sitting at a bloody kitchen table having a chat. And from the crap that they came out with, they might as well have been. I thought it was a very poor effort by them, quite frankly.
It's difficult to understand the motivation behind coming out on a Monday after the end of the home and away season on an issue that essentially died mid-year. It didn't go gracefully, but it certainly died. If you're the CEO or the part owner of a company like Collective Minds, who's enjoyed some pretty negative press over the course of the first 6 months of the year and have subsequently been lying extremely low, like not any activity on their Twitter account, nothing on their LinkedIn account, nothing on their corporate page, like there's been zero activity publicly from Collective Minds since the mid-season presser, basically. Why would you come out at the end of the year and reignite the conversation? And as you rightly point out, Macca, without any sort of branding around what they were doing. I mean, they were two blokes sitting at a table with a white tablecloth with prepared statements. Derek Letty looked almost uninterested. They had Lee McCluskey running the thing with a Peter Credlin type style about her and directing traffic. It was a bizarre situation, and for mine, the only motivator to get Eamon Wolf and Derek Letty to come and sit down and do a press conference like that is someone has said to them, look, it's about time, for the sake of your company, you came out and actually cleared the air, knowing full well that it would reignite a conversation, and that might have actually been advantageous to the person that might have given them a nudge to come out and talk in the first place.
Well, PJ Crow makes a couple of good points in there that, firstly, looking at these individuals, who would give a big fat contract to people like this? I mean, and I can answer that. Bloody Burton would, because he's an idiot. And I hate the guy. Really, he's got to go. But that's another story. And the other point is that once I say Burton, I lose track of everything else because I dislike him so much. But they don't actually do their business any good by what they did, because, as you said, why would you wait several months for an issue that has died, disappeared, and then they've come out and they've made comments which are contradictory in many areas to what's been continually stated. And I think one of the ones, for example, the media making a big fuss about this bloody Richmond song, and because Pikey said it was played, and I believe Pike. Pike's not a liar. I believe Pikey, and they said it was never ever played.
No, Macca, and I made a post on Big Footy today, and because Collective Minds put out a subsequent statement today on the back of some of the media reaction, which was obviously inevitable. From various media outlets, and you've got to actually read what they wrote, and you've got to read what they said. They said that the Richmond song was not played on loop on the bus, right? The exact words were, the Richmond theme song was not played on the bus during the trip. There was a comedian on the bus who sang a few bars of the song, but that was it. Now, you've got to, it's not about what was said, it's about what's not said. It may not have been played on the bus, but I can guarantee you, because I've been told, that it was played at a portion of the camp where blokes were blindfolded, and members, I think these were largely members of the leadership group, were blindfolded and led off to a different section of the camp to do another, module or whatever. So there's no doubt that the Richmond song was played at the camp. It's just that people didn't ask the right question. Everyone's asking, was the Richmond song played on the bus? It may not have been played on the bus, and that's what Wolf's come out and said, but it was certainly played at the camp. And it has certainly been played at other times during Adelaide's pre-season as well. I've been told by the club themselves that it was played at times during training sessions on the speakers at Amy Stadium or Adelaide Oval, wherever they were doing their training sessions. So the Richmond Club song was used as a motivating tool during pre-season. The fact that it wasn't used on the bus is immaterial. It has been used.
I couldn't believe the fuss that was it Caroline Wilson, or who's that buffoon on Channel 7?
Sam McClure.
Sam McClure, my God almighty. He talked about it as if it was the greatest scoop on earth. And he's I don't know where this nobody's risen from, but the point that I was going to make before is you could almost you could be excused, and PJ Crow's made this point, for thinking that Croc Media revived all this.
That's what I was alluding to, mate.
Yeah, because they're the ones that have jumped all over it and making all the noise about it, and you'd almost have to think that, wouldn't you?
Well, someone has motivated Eamon Wolf and Derek Letty to come out and do a presser when the thing is dead and buried. Now, to my way of thinking, Sam McClure, being a journalist and good at spinning a yarn, has approached them and said, look, your brand's been tarnished, your reputation's been tarnished, no better time than now that the Adelaide Crows have finished their season, to come out and clear the air, knowing full well, and this is only speculation on our parts, but it seems to make sense, knowing full well that Collective Minds coming out and doing a presser is just going to restart the whole thing. And Sam's had things lined up since then. He trotted up Jeff Bond, who was the ex-sports psychology head at the AIS, who reiterated some of the comments he made mid-season. He's had other stories about Don Pike asking Collective Minds back into the club. Like, Sam has had 3 months to work on how he was going to revive this story, and I think, and again, just speculation, but I think it makes sense that someone like Sam would approach Eamon Wolf and say, look, here's an opportunity now at the end of the season to come out and clear your brand.
Yeah, maybe. There's a whole factor of things in play there. We probably had an agreement with them not to publicly comment during the season as part of the exiting part of the contract. Also, you hit on a really important point, I think, earlier on about how amateur hour the whole setup was at that conference the other day. And I know it's just the aesthetics of it, but the way that the conference rolled out was just really indicative of, if that's the preparation that they're going to put into putting in a press conference that's aimed at saving their brand and the product they're putting out to the other people, and that's what they come up with. What the fuck did they do to our team?
Yeah, it was second rate, and quite coincidental that it was conducted in the same room that Croc Media and Channel 9 do a lot of their stuff at the G. Like, there's 1,000 conference rooms, and there's 1,000 TV studios around. Why was it held at Croc's space at the MCG? Makes you wonder.
Yeah. Well, you do have to wonder.
Anyway, the bottom line is the Crows haven't come out and addressed any of that. It'll be interesting to see if they do. I don't think they will. The Crows have, were begrudging it, even coming out mid-year and addressing it. I think they just want the whole thing to blow over. I reckon they'll let McClure go on his merry way. Caroline Wilson's had a few shots as well, but there's really not a great deal of new information come out. So I would be very surprised if the club comes out and says anything on it.
Well, there really was nothing new. It was just arguing about the Richmond song, and I thought to myself, I cannot believe that this is primetime media arguing about whether the Richmond song was played or not. So what if it was played?
Yeah, and look, another little feather in Pikey's cap I can give him. Sorry to speak quick, Pete, but the little cap for Pikey's hat is that he didn't allow the weaseling out of the Richmond song. Like Burton was happy to sort of say it wasn't happening, and Croc Media kind of happy not to say it was happening, but Pikey was, when he had a chance to speak, he goes, yeah, it was played, and, it wasn't that good. And I think I just really hope that he gets more control over the operations of that club over this off-season, otherwise we are...
Well, of course, the other bit to do with the Mitch situation is the fact that Mitch reportedly may have been unhappy with the injury management side of things at the Crows, And that kind of leads into another little bomb that got dropped by Rowie today, and which we've talked about previously with regards to Kangatech. Pete, did you happen to catch that this afternoon?
Didn't catch that, but I know from chatting to you through the week that you had a couple of little tidbits for us this evening.
Only in regards to what I think we mentioned previously, that the Crows have been on a bit of a campaign of cutting a few staff down there to make way for a spend on upgrading the interface between or that we use to interact with Kangatech. Is probably not a very well kept secret that our implementation of Kangatech down at the club wasn't a great success. And you only have to look at the situation with Sammy Gibson to see the difference between how North use Kanga and how we do.
So did you not want to go that bit of info about employees and certain employees, and have I lost you? Or you're just not going to go with that one tonight? That's all right. Just don't go with it. That's fine. I just thought you were.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no. Well, look.
I mean,
no. It's okay. Look. I mean, yeah. At this stage, let's just say that there's been some cuts made at the club in order to make way for a spend on improving the technology that we use to utilise Kangatech, and that perhaps not everyone is happy with those cuts down at the club from playing perspective. There's been some, I believe there's been some cuts to some areas of the health or the strength and conditioning section. At a lower level, maybe some massage staff or physio staff or ancillary staff. So two things come from that. First of all, it kind of underpins what we've been saying about the less than professional implementation of some pretty solid technology in Kangatech that's been proven in other sporting environments. And also the club's steadfast desire to stay under the luxury tax cap by having to make cuts in other areas in order to fund some improvements in that area.
Yeah, well, that's what we were talking about that before the show started, and as you said, the club is putting money before success.
Mm.
Look, it's just
Campo.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, so does that mean Campo's doing the mids, forwards, and backs now?
Yeah, well, we haven't even got to the assistants yet. I mean, look, it's fair to say that Kangatech has been a disaster, and not because of Kangatech, but because of the implementation. And like I said, you only have to look at Sam Gibson. He spent 2 years under that technology at North Melbourne, didn't experience a soft tissue injury during his whole career at North Melbourne, under the auspices of or under the oversight of Steve Saunders, and he comes to Adelaide, and under the same technology, utilising the same technology, and he's out for a third of the season with hamstring issues. And no, Pete, I'm not going to talk about that other thing just now, not just now.
I'm going to move it along, because you mentioned the assistants. We really should have a quick chat about that, because I think that was a really important development when you have a quality assistant coach like Josh Franco, who's been plying his trade at a professional organisation like the Sydney Swans. He decides he wants to come home to Adelaide. He signs a 3-year deal with the club, and that tells you that he's obviously he wants to move home. And then not 1 year into that contract, he's off again. And I don't know. I'm interested in everybody's thoughts, but that to me is that's not a good outcome for the club.
Well, the word is he's supposed to be going to Gold Coast to be with his mate Duke, but again, we got my understanding is he's not going to be promoted any higher, so it's only an equivalent job, and I didn't think that they could break their contracts like that.
I think they can if they get offered a senior assistant job, Macca. I think that's part of the deal.
Well, if he's going to get offered a senior assistant's job up there,
I think that's what it is.
Well, then in that case, then he will be able to move. If it was just for light, well, then he couldn't.
Well, what that begs the question. It begs the question is if after 1 year into a 3-year deal, he's gone because there is a promotion. That says to me that he can't see any pathway for himself at Adelaide in that 3-year period. Why isn't there some pathway for assistant coaches to get into a more senior role when we have 2 assistant coaches there who are tantamount to public servants on a permanent, they're on a permanent basis, blocking up those positions. There is, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there is any other club in the AFL who has 2 assistant coaches who just sit there like effing public servants and have tenure in their position. There's no worry about the right seat on the right bus for those 2 because they've got permanent tickets. They just sit on the bus and they just drive as far as it goes. They never have to get off. Bell never rings for those 2. It is ridiculous. And you've got a club like Hawthorn who have an outstanding assistant coach like Brett Ratton. And Jeff Kennett came out in the media and said, he hasn't done anything wrong. We value Brett Ratton highly. It's just simply Hawthorn policy that after a certain amount of time, you have to rotate. You have to get fresh ideas in. You have to get new people in. And so Brett Ratton is a victim of that. And no malice, everybody, it's fine. He just picks up a role somewhere else. Why is there not fresh blood coming into the Adelaide Football Club in the assistant coaching roles? And when we get someone that's highly regarded, like Josh Franco, who's applied their trade at a professional club like Sydney, why is it that he can come and spend 1 year at the club and see no movement in his future? And so he ends up at the Gold Coast of all places. It's a bloody absolute disgrace.
Well, it's a bad reflection on us.
To steal a line from Mac, I couldn't agree more, Peter. And the other thing too about Campo,
I thought you were going to call me a dickhead.
No. It's the other thing about Campo too, and not everyone's like this, but I think what you're saying about the assistant, the public servant things is pretty spot on. For someone that doesn't seem to have the ambition to want that top job ever, probably was a prime candidate after 2015. Probably could have put his hand up at a couple of other occasions. Does he still only coach part-time? Like, for me, I really like ambitious people because I know they're going to burn themselves out to show you everything they've got. And if you've got a couple of people that are just plotters in really key roles, then you're just not pushing that forward at all.
Pete, I'm 100% with you with regards to this. Josh Franco relocated his whole family to come to Adelaide. He signed on for 3 years. And yes, Stuart Dew and him have worked in a previous system, and I'm sure that Dew made a pretty good offer to him to come up and be his right-hand man at Gold Coast. The 2 things come of that. First of all, Stuart Dew is willing to risk his own reputation as a coach by having Josh Franco as his senior assistant. I mean, that's a key appointment that a coach makes, and Stuart Dew's trusted that position to Josh Franco. So that kind of says to me that Franco's got some ability as a senior coach, as a senior assistant. And secondly, why is Josh so willing to leave Adelaide after 1 year when he's obviously committed to the club over a longer term? Clearly he came to the club thinking there were pathways for him. Why, after 12 months, has this all changed? It smacks of some underlying issues there. And then when you dovetail that into the, as you say, the public service style tenures of a couple of our senior assistants, it makes you wonder what the process of appointments is down there for assistant coaches.
And who appoints them?
Well, I don't think it's the coach that appoints them because Camporelli has survived 3 coaching changes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So it can't be the coach.
Surely it's the football manager.
Well, he's survived 2 football managers, Macca.
He survives everybody.
I don't know what to say.
Well, I know what to say. I know what to say.
He's not on contract. He's just a permanent. He's got a permanent position.
He's on the Neil Craig deal.
He's on the. Well, he's not, because his contract's up next year, and we don't want to pay him out, which is why he's still there this year, ostensibly. But it runs deeper than that, Pete. And there's been a lot of talk on Big Footy and other forums about how members can agitate for change. If you actually go and have a look at the way the club is constituted, then you realise very quickly that there is no mechanism to agitate for change from the membership group. There are existing commercial and personal relationships within the club. You've got relationships between board members. You've got relationships between board members and staff. There are definite connections between different members of our football club at board level and between board and executive. Now, when you're asking the club to conduct a thorough, impartial review, and if you're asking the club to be forthcoming and authentic with regards to its assessment of the performance of individuals, that's very hard to do when you've got personal and commercial relationships with those people.
Yeah, that's exactly true. You're talking about Rashudo.
I'm talking about a number of people. You've got
there's a whole lot of them.
You've got relationships between Hurley and Rashudo. You've got relationships between Hurley, Rashudo, and Camporelli. You've got relationships between Rashudo and Burton. I mean, there's the relationships amongst the people who are decision makers at the club. They're all intertwined.
Inbred, I think, is the term.
Well, I mean,
inbred. That's what it is.
Whatever you want to call it, you can't deny that it makes it very difficult to have a impartial review or an impartial assessment or impartial performance management of certain individuals. Because if they were to come out and say, well, Brett Burton did a shit job this year and we're going to sack him, what flow-on effect is that going to have? They're not going to throw a mate under the bus. They're not going to do it.
I wish they would. But the whole point is that's why it should be it should be an external review, because then you've got no loyalties, you've got no associations or bias towards anybody. And if you pick the right people to do an external review, you'll get the right result.
The other assistant coach that I think has left is Kaesler?
Yes.
Tate Kaesler? No, he's left as well. We have, this comes on the back of losing Teague last year as well.
Yep.
I just get the sense that we have these really. Teague was very highly rated. Did a very, very good job with our. I think that he was our forwards coach last year.
Yeah. Well, he was appointed by Walshy.
Did a superb. Yeah, exactly. And so we have these really, really up and coming, promising assistant coaches, and they go. They leave, and there is obviously a ceiling at West Lakes that you hit, and Josh Franco, I would suggest, has seen the writing on the wall very quickly, and they're all, these guys are snapped up by other clubs. Teague's at Carlton, which is where Mitch McGovern's likely to go to reunite with him. There's been some speculation that it's one of the key reasons that Mitch McGovern will choose Carlton is to get back with Teague. And so, these are highly rated assistant coaches that just come into our system and then flow out again.
Yeah,
because there is this sludge at the top that they can't get past.
Well, and we're talking, you only have to look at the and this is only personal perspective again, and I've got to say that on the CrowCast, we're a little bit between a rock and a hard place, because in order for us to bring good content to our listeners, we have to maintain a good relationship with the club. And yet, for the same reason, we're kind of duty-bound to also hold the club to account and to be honest with our opinions. So it's not that we're walking a tightrope here, but by the same token, we're very measured about what we say about the club, because the last thing we want to do is put ourselves in a situation where, the club casts us aside, and that limits the type of content that we can provide. But that said, you only have to look at the difference in the rhetoric from our CEO, Andrew Fagan, to understand the impact that the culture at the Adelaide Football Club has on individuals. Because when Andrew Fagan came in, he spoke very succinctly about building a best-in-class football department, right? Best in class. So you're talking about putting the right bums on the right seats, and Macca, this has been a bugbear of yours in particular. But it's hard to take Andrew seriously when subsequently, in more recent times, when comparing Brett Burton to, say, the outgoing head of strength and conditioning, Nick Poulos, it's hard to take Andrew seriously when he says that Brett Burton runs rings around Nick Poulos. Nick Poulos just spent 6 months with our World Rugby Sevens system. Nick Poulos is a world-renowned mouthpiece for injury management. He's widely respected. He is delivered at conferences. He is, in the space that he operates in, he is on a world stage. Now, Brett Burton has one failed appointment at Brisbane behind him, and now he's at Adelaide. So it's hard to take Andrew seriously when he says that Brett runs rings around Nick Poulos, when the facts in front of you say exactly, like, just objective, without knowing either of the two individuals personally or professionally, that the facts that sit in front of you say that can't possibly be true.
Well, they made the point that they searched everywhere and he was the best one to come up with. And we're comparing that position that he's holding with Neil Barn from Richmond. Come on.
Yeah,
Come on. That's like having 10 million in one hand and 3 cents in the other.
Also, for a bloke that's supposed to be our fitness expert guru, all-round top bloke, I'm looking at his footy wire here. He managed to put a full season together, by the look of it, on one occasion, like an actual full season. And he never actually managed to get himself fit himself. I reckon 16, 17 is probably his average games per season. Like, this is a bloke that couldn't get himself fit, and we're trusting him to get a whole club fit.
Yeah. That might be just his own body that dictates that.
Or he was pushing himself so hard all the time, and he kept breaking it.
Yeah, quite possible.
But you are right, though.
I guess
and what Fagan said, though, he said he was going to have the best people in every position. And
best in class football department. We sat there and listened to him say it, Macca. Best in class football department. And I guess the point that I'm making is that the culture is very thick at the Adelaide Football Club, very thick. And I have observed a change in the demeanour and the rhetoric that's come from Andrew. And it's not the authentic club that was promised to us back at the start of 2015. And, notwithstanding Phil's tragic passing, the club set themselves on a path, irrespective of who was coaching. You would have hoped that even if Phil, carried out his tenure and left, that the club would have continued along this path. They set themselves on a path of authenticity, of being a no-spin club, and having best-in-class appointments. And yet here we are 3 years later. We've got a absolute disastrous situation with Collective Minds. We've got a poorly implemented system in Kangatech. We've got the club that's spinning harder than my washing machine on spin cycle. And it makes you wonder, what happened to that authentic club, that no-spin club? What happened to that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. I actually thought when Roo first came into the club that he would be a no-nonsense man and would not tolerate that sort of stuff. And it seems to me like unfortunately, his relationships with people encourage that sort of thing.
Well, I think I feel like when Fagan came in and Rue came in, there was a proper clean. Like there felt like there was a cleaning out and a changing of the guard, especially after the Triggy sort of years. And I actually felt a refresh. But what I think's happened is they got close. They got pretty close to the flame at the end of last year, and now they're sort of working hard and holding on tight, and clinging to the fact that they're only 2.5 quarters away from a flag. And they're not actually sitting there going, actually, this is what we really are. Like, these are the problems that we have right now. And if we don't conquer these problems, they're going to keep dragging us down further and further. And I truly believe Pikey sees where we are. I worry about everybody else.
Well, this is where I draw Pete back into the conversation, because that would all be well and good, Donkey, except that it's not a club-wide realisation, because we've heard whispers all season about fractures within the playing group, between the leadership group and others, and we've also heard whispers of disharmony between certain sections of the playing group and the administration. So it's not a unified club at the moment. Pete, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's. We've certainly had information through about some of the various sort of cliques in the playing group, and but also I think more importantly, we've had certainly some pretty solid information in relation to a couple of players being dissatisfied. Mitch wasn't the only one dissatisfied with his injury treatment. So there is some more issues there in relation to. There are 2 other players that we know of for sure that have been in dispute with the club in relation to their injury treatment.
There's a lot of noise about Brad Couch too, unless he was one of the 2.
And so that's
No, well, he's the one I worry about. Like I think,
yeah. Well, you wouldn't have to be a rocket scientist to work it out, would you, Donk?
Nah.
And there was another one as well. So there's no doubt that there has been there is friction down there. But what they just need to use this extra month that they're going to get, to get a march on 2019, and to resolve some of these issues and put them to bed.
And it's very difficult when you're talking about a player that may have been relying on a certain number of games or a certain level of output in order to trigger some clauses in his contract, who may feel that his inability to pull those triggers or to trigger those clauses was not his fault, but the manner in which he was managed by a dysfunctional strength and conditioning department, Pete.
Well, that's right. We know that there's one player in dispute down there for that very issue, which I know that's why you've raised it. So yeah, there is some problems down there, and you cannot hide away from the fact that year upon year we have quality young players that walk out of the club. There's got to be some accountability for that. We can't just keep saying it year upon year that there was this reason, there was that reason, we were a bit unlucky with this and we were a bit unlucky with that. It's been going on. The exodus has been going on since 2012.
Yep.
And it happens pretty much every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're always the good ones, of course.
Oh yeah. The joke's going to be the All Adelaide exit team, and that won't be far away from being named. and can you imagine what that team's going to look like?
Bloody good.
It's going to be an outstanding team.
Well, it'd probably be called Adelaide Exit Team All Stars.
I wonder how many, not posthumous, but what is it? Postcrolulus, all Australians there are in that team. Dangerfield, Gunson are a couple. Phil Davis, I think, has got one. There's a fair few All Australians that occurred after they left us.
It's going to be a high quality team. Can we just move quickly to a positive? Just as I'm having a look at the clock, and there was just one really, really big positive that I wanted to get out there tonight, and that was a big shout out for big Elliot Himmelberg and his debut on Saturday night. It was worth turning I wasn't even going to watch until I realised that he'd been named. And as you'd all know, he's a favourite of mine, and I've sort of talked him up a lot. I think I might have put out a tweet that I think that in 4 or 5 years' time, if you want to redo the 2016 draft, he'll be a top 10 pick.
Wow.
And he'll move from 51 down into a top 10 pick in 5 years' time if you redo that draft in 5 years. That's how much I believe in him, and I think he has got so much talent, and he is nowhere near ready to play AFL football at this stage, and he proved that in the second half. But what we saw in that first half should have delighted all Crows fans, and provided we can keep him. He is a 200 centimetre, huge body that has incredible agility for his size, and he has a absolutely outstanding football brain. His below the knees pickup and handball to Jordan Gallucci to set up a goal. That goal assist was for a 200 centimetre bloke. That was absolute pure class. And of course the Hollywood goal spoke for itself. So a big shout out to him. I thought it was for a kid that I don't believe will be ready for AFL football for another 12 months. To get a little taster like that, I thought was terrific, and he just showed what he will be capable of when his body is right and ready to go.
Yep, can't argue that in any of that.
Well, drink.
Just said then. Yeah. I like the agility of the guy, and also the way that he reads where the ball's going to. That's why a couple of times he smashed into Jenkins, because his eyes
both on the same spot.
Yeah, eyes were totally on the ball.
The other thing I really loved is just the way that when his lead up in the first quarter, his lead up and mark, just that really, really decisive decision making and quick brain to get that ball into open space for Jenkins to run onto. Doesn't look particularly spectacular, but that took really, really quick movement, quick thinking, and he got the ball right exactly where it needed to be for Jenkins to run onto. He's just a really, really smart footballer.
And good pace for his size.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very good, Pete. That's
a tick.
It's a big tick. And, that it was a nice way to round off the season, and we can talk for 5 seconds about the Carlton game, I guess. Macca and I have obviously had our say on the Carlton game on Sunday night, but really, that was really the only thing to come out of it that was that and Wayne Miller's ongoing progression as a footballer, and also Jordan Gallucci's ongoing development as a footballer were probably reason enough to watch what was otherwise a non-event. Yeah,
it was an absolute nothing game, and as I said, if the Big Easy hadn't debuted, I wouldn't have even turned on the TV, to be honest. So it was terrific to see him, and as you say, Jordan Gallucci, who we've talked about as being such a promising young player. And, you just got to, kids like, Miller is safe, but the kids like, Gallucci, Himmelberg, Duday, who've, come on so wonderfully this year, you just got to hope you can keep them.
Yep.
Because that's where we are as a club.
Yeah, well, PJ, I think, said on the chat, Himmelberg's going to play 150 games, and I just hope that's 150 games with us.
Yeah, who with?
Yeah, anyway. Anything else that we can talk about? We're into match talk, but who wants to talk about the Carlton game, really, because it was a non-event?
Just very quickly, I did have a little bit of information come my way about some early targets in the trade period. A couple of players that we're potentially looking at. No, nothing to say that we'll get these players across the line, but these are just a couple of players that I'm hearing that we're looking at. First one is a kid by the name of James Rose, who is a midfielder currently with the Sydney Swans. Veen, you might remember him. He was picked 37 in the 2014 draft from the Sturt Football Club.
God, I didn't even realise he was still in the system. Yep.
So he's he's out of contract at the end of this year, and still on Sydney's list. He's been on their list for 4 years, just the 10 games for him. So has not found it easy to break into that Sydney midfield, and so he is on our radar. And the second player I'm hearing is on our radar is Adam Thomason at GW, key position player at GWS. So there's just a couple of names to keep an eye on during the trade period.
Mm.
And is Tomlinson out of contract at the end of this year?
Good question, Mac. I didn't actually check. I didn't have time to check. I only managed to look up James Rose, so not sure about Tomlinson. I assume he would be.
They've been using him as a jack of all trades. He's been playing on back, up forward, in ruck, all over the place.
That's probably the reason, Mac. We're probably one short in our back stocks in that area, and I think the interesting thing is if we end up looking at our ruck situation, hard to believe they're going to persist with Riley O'Brien, if you ask me.
Yes, you don't hear much about him, but that's for sure.
Well, he's been injured for the last couple of months, but by golly, he's been on the list for what, 3-4 seasons now.
3, I think. But
yeah, 4. I reckon he'd be on just about 4 years. I reckon. Fang.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
You try and tell Sauce he's having a rest.
Oh well, at some. Yeah, it's probably a chat for another time once we understand what's going on with our trading. And just before we finish up this segment and move into what everyone's waiting for, which is Donkey's Competitions, I have to say g'day to the people on Facebook. Thanks for joining us, and obviously our regulars and some new faces on the Spreaker chat as well, which is being streamed on our Facebook Live video. Thanks all for your ongoing support as usual. Do we want to get into some competitions, Donkey? Are you prepared for your big moment?
Yeah, look, I've been really looking forward to this moment all season.
Hang on a minute. We'll wait for your music. Wait for your music. Go.
Where is he?
Good evening, and welcome to Dream Team and Sports Tipping Competition Finality for 2018. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that participated in all the competitions that we got going. I know it's a bit boring to hear rattling through some of these figures on the cast, but a really big thank you for everybody involved in jumping on and getting involved. We've had a lot of fun sledging me in the background over this competition report every night, so I wouldn't feel like part of the team if it didn't happen. So happy days. We're going to go through the grand final over the weekend and all of the ins and outs for both grand final teams over the whole year, just to see how they put those sides together and different trading strategies that are used. And then we're going to go and jump across to the tipping. Oh, well, I wasn't, but I've been doing research throughout the cast, so I've been a bit quiet. Also, I wasn't on Sunday night, but apparently a few of you blokes sledged me. I've been asking for names. They haven't been provided to me, but I will go back and find them. So, look, let's get into it. So we had a big grand final here in the Real Dream Team over the weekend. It was a cracker of a match. Both the Winter March and Dylan FFC scored more in one round than Phoenix did in his last 3, I think. So that's pretty exciting.
That takes some doing,
Not even kidding. Actually, a little bit kidding. You're probably about 500 short, but, they did pretty well. The Winter March, or Peanut, as he's known on the Big Footy board, came in with a big 2,622, which is a huge score, really.
Would win most comps, really.
Would have won most comps. It just shows the high calibre of our league, which was ranked 567 out of a whopping 1,273. Winter March had a few good wins throughout the year, so great stuff, Peanut. You've done really well. You've only gone down by a handful, but Dylan FCC comes through on 2,668 and claims the crown, bragging rights, and the signed footy. So Dylan, as the Super Coach Div 1 champion of the Adelaide Crows board, I say congratulations to you as the Dream Team champion. So a couple of champions there going around picking each other.
amazing we got a live studio audience in tonight.
Yeah, thanks for Mum. Mum sitting over in the corner just listening to me. It's been really good.
Hey, Fane, can you use that when we do the live calls next year?
Yeah, that's right. Kick on.
All right, no worries. We'll do. Look, I'm going to start with probably my biggest disappointment of the tipping competition. I was pretty heavy on. I thought Moyley was going to come through and take the crown about 8 weeks ago. I thought he was our man, but he has. He's put into Port Adelaide and fallen right away. He's only come in at 135, so he's coming at 5th. Dom, 135 as well. Got the nod on over with the cumulative margin and 4th. The Cellar Dwellers have come in at 136. And then it's up to B Short and J Mac to see who got the biscuits for the year. So, again, well done, guys. Hard tipping all year. And J Mac is the 2018 CrowCast tipping champion on 141. So well done, mate.
J-Mac.
You have nailed it.
All right, that's enough.
And as we move down to the CrowCast end of the ladder, Donkey Magoo leading out from Pete by 2 points. Who was leading out Fiend by 6 points. Again, we all got 6 for the round. Amazing. I think the last 12 weeks we've been in step and haven't missed a beat with each other. And
I wonder why that is. Lots of away team.
Yeah, it was amazing. We've all got 6 this week, which was the amount of away teams that won. So it was fantastic effort from all three of us. Yeah, it was crazy stuff. So that is it. That's the wrap from the Sports Desk CrowCast, something tonight.
Hang on a minute, Donkey. What do these blokes win?
Pride. Oh, and footies. I've already mentioned the footies.
Did you mention the footies, did you?
Yeah, he did.
I nodded off.
Nice work, Dom. Nice work.
Oh, goodness me. Very good, Donkey. Well done, mate.
Thank you.
And I guess now it's time for Game of Crows. Well, Game of Crows, eh? It was a difficult final round for everyone concerned, really, because we had a rather contrived situation in terms of how we wanted to finish off the season. But it was necessary because it was such a dog's breakfast throughout the year. So thanks to everyone who stuck with us. We didn't have too many entries in the final round, which is probably indicative of how things played out. But nonetheless, we did find a winner, and if people will just bear with me for a moment, I'll bring that up onto the screen. But who's that? Macca, you're out.
That was Donkey.
Was it Donkey, was it?
Wouldn't be me, I wouldn't do
that. Donkey.
Yeah, but look, without further ado, I'm pleased to announce that the winner of Game of Crows this year, with a score of 106 points, was Grey Crow from the Big Footy boards. I've got the final round results here that people can look at, and Grey Crow actually scored, what did he score? Minus 45 for the last round. Buckets NJ, who was leading for the majority of the season, crashed and burned because he failed on Sydney and the Giants in that final round, so he got a fairly bad score. Captain and Mads was another one who just failed on the Sydney one, which cost a couple of people, and Joel Constable, who I thought might have snuck in as a previous winner, he failed on the Giants and Sydney. So Grey Crow got 8 out of 8. No one actually got any bonus scores at all, but the 8 out of the 8 was enough for Grey Crow to win the carton of beer for 2018. So thanks everyone who participated in Game of Crows during the season. I don't think we did Scorpus justice in terms of how we ran it, but it will be back again, bigger and better, as will our tipping and Dream Team competitions next season. And for those of you who are familiar, we will probably be doing something around Moneyball next season. Moneyball is another site. Donkey, you familiar with Moneyball?
No, not at all. And we'll have to talk about this away from other people, I think.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so Moneyball is an opportunity to do head-to-head stuff and one-off stuff, and we'll be utilising that a little bit throughout the 2019 season. So we have to say a big thank you to the Adelaide Football Club for donating the footies for the tipping and Dream Team competitions. Thanks to Ian Shuttleworth and the Crows for those signed footies, signed by Tex and also Pikey. If J-Mac and... who won bloody Dream Team again? Dylan.
Some bloke.
Dylan, yeah. If those two winners want to drop me a PM, you guys are both on... J-Mac, I don't know whether you're on Big Footy. But anyway, drop me a DM on Twitter or on Big Footy with your address details so I can send those footies out to you. That'll be awesome. And Grey Crow, if you can get in touch with me on Big Footy, and we'll work out how to get you some beer. Good job. Now, Macca, it's up to you, mate, to bring us home.
Oh, yes, I am a grumpy old man. That's what I am. And I really don't care who knows it. I don't.
Well, first we'll start off with the sweets. And the sweets this time, we did touch lightly on them just a little while ago. As Pete said, the point in watching the game on the weekend was really just to see the young boys. And I know Dode didn't play, but we did have at least 3 good players emerge out of this year. And there's Dode, there's... what's his name?
Macca, this is a very subdued start. Very subdued. I'm actually...
What do you think of Burton, Macca?
I'm questioning this segment.
No. I had a rule written down and I've lost my paper.
Did you check the letterbox?
Right, sorry. Back to what I say. Dode and Gallucci and Miller has taken a big step forward. It's not often that we get 3 players that you can see have got very long futures with the club emerge in the 1 year, and to me the sweets go to.
Is Mrs. Macca there?
She is. You want to talk it?
Yeah, can you put her on, please? Because we need Mrs. Macca's sweets and smacks.
She's the actual star of the show.
Right. Well, this
is an insipid effort by you, Macca, and we need.
I know. I lost my piece of paper.
We need Mrs. Macca on to give us a bloody recipe or something.
Macca's mailing it in, which is a big effort.
You need a piece of paper. You need a piece of paper to have the word "dickhead" written down.
No, we're all hanging out for one thing, Macca. Jesus.
No, it wasn't for bloody.
I've got half a bottle of wine to go.
No, I wanted Sam McClure and Caroline Wilson were going to get the smacks for
dickheads.
Carrying a lot. Well, they were dickheads, and they were.
You stole my line, Macca.
And they were carrying like pork chops about this bloody camp again.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I got to say that absolutely sick about the bloody camp, and I blame Burton for everything, and it's Burton's fault. So there you are.
But can you tell us some details on why it's Burton's fault?
What, you want bloody details?
Yeah, I mean, just to bring us up to speed.
Well, firstly, he put behind this bloody mob for the camp.
Oh, Jesus, here we go.
He implemented a training program that broke down all the bloody players. He is an absolute dickhead, and he
should. Bingo!
A good piece of paper.
If Macca can find his piece of paper, we will post it on Facebook and Twitter just as evidence that such piece of paper did actually exist. To be honest with you, I'm not so sure. Thanks, Macca, for your sweets and smacks. Now, everyone on the chat is actually saying that was Macca's final sweets and smacks, notwithstanding the fact that it could be just based on performance. Tuesday Night Live will be continuing throughout the final series. I haven't actually told you blokes that yet, but but
This wasn't in my contract.
but some of us will be here during next week and during the final series all the way through. Same as last year, we went through all the way through until the draft, and we'll be doing that again this year. And it looks like we'll have a fair bit to talk about over the coming weeks, just with the ongoing crap going on at the club, notwithstanding anything else. So,
it's going to be a very busy trade period, mate, isn't it? I mean, that's where it's really. There's going to be plenty of action for us in the trade period and the draft, I think.
Yeah.
Hang on, Mrs. Macker wants to say a few words.
All right, Mrs. Macker, come on board. This isn't a world exclusive.
It is a world exclusive.
Oh, Mrs. Macker, fantastic.
That's me.
How you
It is me.
Just first of all, thank you for coming on to our esteemed show. I think the question that everyone's asking is, how the hell do you put up with Mr. Macker?
Mr. Macker would be... No, I'm going to be very biased. I'm sorry. He's having an eye operation tomorrow, and I'm deeply concerned for him in seriousness.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
That's why he lost his bit of paper.
That's why I lost his bit of paper, only one eye.
Oh, no, well, we...
Now we feel bad.
Oh, no, I don't. I mean...
I do. I love Macker. His dulcet tones put me to sleep.
No, in all seriousness, we love having Mr. Macker on board, and we do wish him all the very best for his operation tomorrow. But that notwithstanding, tell us more about this letterbox situation.
I'd like to catch the bastard who did it.
Gee, that sounded familiar.
Yeah, that's right. You've just been added to the drinking game.
You're a dead ringer.
Absolutely.
Oh, match
Why
made in
wouldn't I
heaven.
be?
Match made in heaven.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It is. Oh, it's a beautiful letterbox. It was magic.
Was it?
Oh, no, it was $300, but didn't matter mine. Now we've got a, what is it, $50 one.
Well, that $300 one's looking all right on my front yard at the moment. It catches
If I
the
knew
letters
where
quite
you lived-
nicely.
Yeah. If I knew where you lived, I'd come and get it back.
And that's why you don't.
All right.
Thanks, Mrs. Macker. Lovely talking to you.
I really enjoyed listening to you guys Sunday and Tuesday, so thanks very much.
Oh, thanks so much. And thanks for
Catch ya.
thanks for that.
Okay.
No
Catch ya.
worries.
Bye.
Bye.
And in all seriousness, Mr. Macker, all the very best and good luck for tomorrow with your eye operation.
Yeah, a bit worried about the bloody thing. So, well, I have been a little bit distracted tonight. So.
Is it just one or?
Yeah, just one eye. It's I had one operation on it. The sight's okay, but one operation on it before, and it made it. I get a lot of pain in the eye because of what that woman did, and this guy's hopefully going to correct it. But you know, if they stuff up, well, then you have troubles.
Yeah.
So I'm just a little bit nervous about it. That's all.
Yeah. Well, you know, all jokes aside, mate, you give us something that we didn't have before on the CrowCast, so we do wish you all the very best.
What's that, bad language?
I wasn't going to say exactly what it was. Can't we just leave on a positive?
Week, make sure you turn up next week, mate.
Okay, I'll be here. I hope.
No, you'll be fine.
All the best, mate.
You'll be fine. Hey, look, let's wind it up for tonight. It's been a great show. Thanks to everyone on both chats for joining us tonight. Fair bit to talk about, and you guys make it that much more enjoyable on Spreaker and Facebook. Don't forget, if you're listening to us on iTunes, please drop us a review. That would be great. We are going through some changes on our website at the moment, so check back intermittently at aflcrowcast.com, where you'll see some upgrades and a different look and feel and some new sections and whatnot. We're also starting our Patreon account, so you can get some information if you log on to patreon.com/aflcrowcast.com. Don't forget, of course, that the offerings within each of the tiers on Patreon will be offered next season, so you're quite welcome to join up right now, but the offerings will be for next season. Thanks, Macca. Thanks, Donkey. Thanks, Pete. It's been a pretty good night. And
Thanks, mate. Thanks, boys.
no Sunday wrap on Sunday, of course, but we will be back next Tuesday for Tuesday Night Live. In the meantime, stay safe. Good luck tomorrow, Macca, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, hopefully. See you all.
See you guys.
All right.